Welcome back to Line Change. I'm Tim Kalinowski, joined by Nick Martin. I'm running the show today for the third consecutive day here on Line Change, Action Network's hockey betting podcast. Lieboff still on vacation. I believe this is the last day we'll be without Lieboff, and maybe it's a good thing because I went to the Rangers game last night, and if he was here, he'd probably virtually hit me over the head or something for being in enemy territory. But we have a great slate here, Nick, handicapping Thursday, January 18 in the NHL, a 10-game slate, which is enough for us to start with some underdogs like we always do, unless we have, one of those 3-game slates. So, Nick, underdog, floor is yours.
Okay, I'm gonna go with I like the Minnesota Wild. They're at plus 124 as of recording. I like them down to plus 115. I think this is a really interesting spot to discuss because specifically, I think this was actually a line change game, Tim. On the January 4th game
Yep.
in Minnesota, I argued aggressively, even with you and Mike in our chat. I was saying I don't understand this line. I think that the books are completely mispricing who's out for the Wild. The Lightning deserve to be a way bigger favorite here. And now I think we're getting the flip side of that, where Minnesota's more or less healthy now. They just don't have Spurgeon. And I don't think that's being accounted for enough. I think that this game is going to be more competitive than this price suggests. I think now's the time to buy back on the Wild. Um, I've kind of let it be known that I really did think it was kind of a valid excuse that their lesser run of play was just playing without so many of the bodies. So yeah, there's a little volatility in goal. Like I'm still never thrilled to bet on Marc-Andre Fleury. Big picture, I think it's obviously still going to be Gustafsson stabilizing in goal for them. But he did have a horrific turn to play or return to play, and I tried to bet on him in that game, and it was a disaster. But so that's kind of the only downfall. But I mean, when we're talking about this kind of a number and the fact that I think the Wild can actually just be step for step with Tampa Bay now that the Wild are healthy again. I think this price deserves to be closer. And if you look at like where the numbers closed in that game when the Wild had none of their guys, I think that it proves the point that the needle's been moved a lot for the Wild's lesser run of results in January. But now that they have more of their guys back, I actually think that that's being overweighted with this price. So yeah, I think the Wild are definitely a very live underdog tomorrow.
Yeah, that spot that we really liked a week or two ago or so when these two teams played. Tampa Bay closed at minus 130, and so Minnesota was plus 110. Again, we thought that was mispriced. Tampa was good value. The Wild, it wasn't easy though. The Wild still hung around a good bit in that game. So I think everything you said, I completely agree with in terms of we were handicapping injuries and now they're healthier. So that changes the math, I think, pretty significantly. This Tampa Bay team, we're still not very high on. They're way better, and not that they've been dogs many times this season, but I think they're way better in situations where we can be like, oh, they're being, a little mispriced here because they haven't played well. They're still the Lightning. This is not one of those situations. We also are idiots, or I'm an idiot because failed to mention that after the Yotes game, heading into the Islanders game, the Wild had a players only meeting. So
Oh yeah,
obviously that's why they beat the Islanders 5-0. That should have been worth at least 50 cents
and
to the
as Mike
line
would
there.
point out, the Islanders getting just another unfair scheduling spot. Yeah, and then the last
Exactly.
thing I'll throw out there too, like the Wild's lineup for specifically that Lightning game, that was like the peak of being as bad as it got. Because
Mhm.
I think people almost have like forgotten that Foligno and Zuccarello missed games in there too, and they were both out for that one. On top of all the other injuries on the back end and everywhere else, they had a bunch of AHL guys who don't typically get in the lineup. So yeah, that now they're kind of stabilized. I think they're going to be a bit of a team to watch here, and could be a team we're kind of end up betting on a few times in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, man, does their lineup look so much better with Kaprizov slotting in, Eck, Boldy, Hartman can actually play in their spots where they should be playing and what makes them, deep and effective. So yeah, the goaltending is always a question mark with them, especially with Fleury. But I think you're in the right spot. I tailed this when you logged it on Wednesday. It was one of the spots that I had circled before the lines came out. So Wild over the Bolts there. My underdog, I'm gonna kind of take a little bit of a cop out here and do a little more thinking out loud because I'm torn between. I like a lot of the favorites on the board for this slate, but I'm torn here on Vegas as a short favorite at home against the Rangers, and the Blues as short dogs to the cat at Washington on Thursday night. You like the Blues. I think what I'm going to do here, part of my cop out, is I want to hear your Blues argument and see if that's enough to sway me. Because just before you start, I'll say one. I was on the Ducks on Tuesday night. You were too, and it was a more of a fade of Washington and kind of feeling that the Ducks were being a little bit undervalued as they got healthier and back to back for a young team. Like, come on. But then I went and looked at. I'm like, so I'm having trouble going back to the well and fading the Caps already because I don't want to sound stupid. So then I was like, okay, if Nick's on the Blues, let me dive into this. Like in terms of the advanced numbers, the Blues are really surprising in how like bad they are. I mean, expected goals for the Caps are 26th, the Blues are 25th. Expected goals against, like ranking it the bad way, the Caps are 24th, the Blues 28th. And then how about just actual goal differential? The Caps minus 19, good for 29th. The Blues minus 15th, good for 27th. So I mean, I'm looking at this. I'm like, man, I don't like the Blues. I would like the Blues at the Ducks price that we had on Tuesday night. I don't know if that. So that's my first. I got the first word there, so I'll give you time for a rebuttal.
I think that those points are valid, and I would stop right at even money. There's plus 105s out at the time of recording. But I just think the Blues have offered slightly more compelling play than that of Washington over the last, like, kind of the shorter sample. I still want to sell on the Caps. I still think that this team is more or less fraudulent. And the Blues, nobody's trying to tell you they're good, but they have a lot more legitimate scoring upside than the Caps. Like, the Caps don't have anyone in the realm of a Kyrou, a Buchnevich, guys like that. I know that Kapanen's out of the picture. I don't rate that too highly. And I think aside from that, they're kind of comparable teams. And this Blues core, granted, some of the guys are gone, has consistently outscored expectations. I think that they're a little better than models seem to view offensively. And that's kind of shined through year after year. So I just look at it with their offensive talents. I think that it's a good spot for them to kind of come in and pay it off. It'll be competitive. I definitely wouldn't go lower than that even money price for the Blues, but I actually think they can be a slight favorite for the Caps right now.
Okay, okay. All right. I guess I'll call my dog the Blues for a half unit because yeah, I still don't think the Caps are very good, but I am very fearful of looking dumb fading the Caps in
I think the
back-to-back
other thing
episodes.
too that deserves a little weight, if you're going to talk about the underlying numbers recently, the Blues have gone. They've been played the Stars, the Avalanche, the Penguins, the Canucks, the Hurricanes, the Panthers, the Rangers, the Bruins, the Flyers. So if you look at teams that are dominating in terms of run of play right now, and just where it actually matters, most of those teams are red hot right now. That will sewer a recent sample. And they've gotten some good wins in there. They were convincing in their win over the Canucks. I know you're on the Canucks there. I'll throw that one back out there. Uh, they beat the Stars, like they beat the Canes, and they beat the Rangers. And the Bruins game too, I thought pretty reasonable. They had the goal taken off the board. They were kind of step for step. Maybe didn't own more of the overall play, but I think it was pretty clear. I think some of the Bruins even said they thought they got a little lucky. So anyways, I think that this sample of play overall has been a lot better since they got rid of Berube, and their top stars are playing better now. And I think that's maybe been a little hidden recently by kind of a sneaky nightmare schedule. So yeah, give me the Blues. I kind
All
of hate
right.
fading the Caps every night, but it's just they're not very good, I don't think.
I tend to agree, and we would say that Anaheim covered the effort spread
It's
on
funny, like
Tuesday
you look
night.
at how few multi-goal wins the Caps have. I don't even know if I went through and counted out. They have like maybe if you erase the empty net goals, they might have like two or three. Like it's pretty much been they lose big or they win. And eventually that does not work. I put it in my little write up on the Ducks. And then maybe that was a bit of a reach for a spot because it was the freaking Ducks playing back to back. But uh, I compared them to the Eagles in my write up on that game, which I think was a really good comparison because it's the kind of thing like when it's working, people talk about doing the little things and championship DNA and clutch and that sort of thing. And they have had that mainly from Lindgren and even Kemper yesterday. But I think overall, it's been a lot of favorable stuff working in their favor too, which is why most models are still so low on them making the playoffs.
Yeah, I'd rather be really good and do the intangible championship things than not very good in just the intangible things. So, okay, I guess you convinced me there. Nick's on the Wild as his dog against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I am on the St. Louis Blues at the Washington Capitals, trying it one more time. To the big board we go. We'll start with the Dallas Stars at the Philadelphia Flyers. The Stars, a -135 favorite. The Flyers +114. Total sitting at 6, Nick. I will say, I'm just going to do a quick victory lap. We were head to head on Tuesday night. I was on the Stars. You were on the Kings. Finally got a win. I was quiet in the chat
Deserved too.
because it had been a while.
I
It
would have
was
been
strictly
told,
business.
especially because it was very objectively correct. There aren't that many picks in the NHL where you just feel like a complete idiot, and that was just a bad pick. Mine, not yours on the Stars. They earned it. I think I reached because I just feel like I want to buy on this Kings team.
Yeah, and we will get to that because the Kings are further down on the big board. But any thoughts on the Stars and the Flyers? I would say initially looking at the number, Flyers are still a team that I want to back. I've said it over and over again. They're about as good of a bet in the NHL for a complete effort, a team to show up, which in an 82 game sample size is about, all you can ask for. Like the biggest hope when you're betting the NHL, a sport that plays a lot of games, is like, is this team going to show up? The Flyers, I feel like 99.9% of the time do show up. And I think that's reflected in the number here. I really like to play the Flyers as a little bigger dogs in this, but it looks like the books are really giving Philly respect here. And, I'm going to kind of like just tip my cap to the books and say, I think you're right on this line and probably move on.
Yeah, I fully agree. I didn't really have much sucking me in here. If anything, I'm closer to if -135 held and I had confirmation that Couturier was going to remain out, then I actually would be looking closer to looking at a play on Dallas. Jamie Drysdale's also day to day. Who knows if he'll miss? And he's been excellent, but I know he also wasn't even part of the team until like 4 games ago, right? So
Yeah,
they
they show
obviously,
they can win without him, I think.
yeah, as great as he has been for them so far.
Fair enough. How about the Montreal Canadiens and the Ottawa Senators? The Senators basically, I mean, look at this line. The Senators are a -180 favorite. Canadiens second half of back-to-back, they're +150, total 6.5. In terms of um in terms of in terms of expectations and performance relative to expectations, these teams aren't even close. Montreal exceeds expectations with their roster. They've been exceeding expectations. Ottawa, on the other hand, it has been the same story seemingly every single night. If we were making this line based off just like deserving favorite and, deserving dog, it would not look like this, but that's obviously not how the numbers are made. Ottawa here, I mean, we've been saying it for weeks, feels like they're ready for a win. I just don't want to put real actual dollars on this team.
No, we finally figured out how to handicap them Tuesday with the over. And I mean, it sucked that Colorado took a year to announce their goaltending starter, but the save prop that I loved did get home easily with 36 saves from Puustinen. So, and what do you even say if you're the Senators? And like to kind of build on your point, yeah, like the Canadiens have done such a good job of having like the maximum amount of points that they basically could have with their run of play. Like they've hung around in games. Granted, a ton of those have come in overtime, but still, they know what they're doing getting there. The Sens, they say it's hard to score goals in the NHL, but it's not hard to. Well, the second they get a lead, it's like every single night. I don't know what happens. It's just it's getting to the point where it's remarkable. I couldn't believe yesterday when I looked and it was 4-2, and then it got to 7-4. Like, what is going on? And we talked about the possibility that maybe Martin didn't know how to coach at the NHL level anymore, and that maybe that was getting like he's obviously so proven, but like the game is so much different now. They've given up over 4.5 goals in the time that he's been coach. And I know that they were giving up a lot of goals all season long. I know that the goaltending's bad, but I do think that their defensive play has even dipped, which is pretty insane. So I don't know. I don't have a play on this one. It feels like the spot. If you're the Sens, you have to pay it off. But we said that a million times. Um, I think you could consider going to Jake Allen saves again because it's just I think they will get their control of the play here. But at the same time, I'm a little afraid because his overall play, he did play really good on Monday, but hasn't been as convincing as Montembeault. And I think there's a world where maybe the Sens just finish a lot of their chances quick and that hurts it. But that would kind of be my first look on this game.
Yeah, when you say that, I felt like you were going in the right direction with the saves prop, but at the same time, part of why the Sens have been so hard to handicap is because they're so volatile. Like would anyone be shocked if they scored 7 in this game and that save prop is tanked, but
For sure.
you don't feel confident enough to like lay it with them in any aspect, regulation, puck line, whatever it may be. The thing about Ottawa, you know, we talk about these bottom of the league teams that we tend to have a laugh at, San Jose, Chicago, but when teams play them, like San Jose and Chicago give their best shot, feels like every night. But when you're playing Ottawa, scoring goals in the NHL is hard. It has turned into point night when you're playing the Ottawa Senators. It has not been point night when you're playing San Jose in Chicago. It's been point night when you're playing Ottawa in like a 7-5 game.
It's a joke. I don't think this is very debatable. There isn't a team that I think can be more ashamed of their record than the Ottawa Senators in the NHL right now. Because the other ones everyone knew were going to be a train wreck. Like
Right.
those other ones, people were posting their rosters preseason being like, oh, look at this. Like this is a joke. Like tank for Celebrini. And then you had people like us, like me, I've historically done pretty good on NHL futures. And this is going to be one of the most comically bad takes I've ever had. It could go on freezing gold takes if more people paid attention to this. So don't send it to them because it's a joke. Yeah, we got to move past this team.
Yeah, they are pretty disgusting right now. And it's too early to start like playing out the string. It's mid-January. Like it's not like,
That's the
hey,
problem
let's
is if
book the
they
vacation.
stabilize and play to their potential now, you're just going to finish like 5 spots higher, 6 spots higher,
I
and then you
know,
just probably don't get the same pick. So
100%. How about the Seattle Kraken, the very banged up Seattle Kraken? They are going from New York to Edmonton to play the Oilers. The Oilers, pretty big favorite here, minus 205. The Kraken plus 170. Total is at 6. Oilers have won now 11 in a row after their comeback win against the Leafs. The Kraken, I was in the building to see them play the Rangers on Tuesday night. A pretty boring game from both teams. Did not seem like they were too interested, but I think the Kraken have an excuse in terms of they're really banged up right now. They went on that really, really good winning streak. Surprised a lot of people. Decord's play was great, but now I wouldn't just say it's a return back to earth for this team because they've also been banged up, and that's hard in the NHL. It's hard to play when you're slotting. I think it was McCann who said about Seattle, like, oh yeah, we're all third line players or something. Like that's what makes us so good and deep or whatever. And it's like, well, when you lose that, what are you all now? Four line players? It's really tough for them.
yeah, they honestly, I I think they can be proud of their effort. I don't know what you thought. Like that
I
was the
agree.
definition of a scheduled loss. They had so many key bodies out of the lineup. Like Vince Dunn has been gigantic for them. He's a guy that probably Kraken fans weren't surprised to see how it went without him. And then yeah, Beniers, when it's just and a back-to-back spot, like everything about it just screamed loss. And I thought they actually did a pretty good job hanging around and at least giving it a competitive effort and trying to give it a chance to win. So I think for me, it's still the Oilers are past here, but I'm not loving the price anymore. But we continue to talk about this. Like, I'm not fading this Oilers team right now. Like, um, they're just playing at another level from anyone in the league right now. And we've made the case week after week. And I know that's a little disputed when you talk about what Skinner probably is compared to Hellebuck with the Jets. But I think the rest of the Oilers game has actually been a little bit better. And their offensive upside still obviously a touch beyond that. And I keep making this point pod after pod for like 3 weeks. I think that there's a world, and their price has been dropping from when it was like 12-1 when we first started seeing this. I think there's a world that the Oilers, even in like a tough first round matchup, come into the playoffs like plus 700 and just power rated one by any respectable sports book, and that they'll just be favored in that first round series, no matter of who it is. So yeah, I'm not fading the Oil here in this spot. I think with the bodies out for the Kraken, it's gonna be pretty tough. If anything, I'm still leaning Oil at minus 205.
Yeah, and it's really tough for the Kraken scheduling spot. Like they were playing out east on a road trip, and then before you go home, you got to stop in Edmonton. Like, are you serious? The 11 game win streak Oilers. I will add on too, the Oilers, yes, has been a great run. They've turned it around, all this. But when you look at the schedule, and you had mentioned this, Nick, when you were still buying on them, when they got off to that dreadful start, they had played Vancouver, Winnipeg, Minnesota, New York, Dallas, Vancouver again, like teams that, make you earn it. And then now on this win streak, like this, what I'm trying to make the argument is like, they do get credit for taking care of business because, they've, what the best way to get a boost is in the NHL? Go to Southern California and do that little road trip and play Anaheim and San Jose. So that's what started this winning streak, taking care of business against those teams. Seattle here, the way that their injury situation looks is like runs parallel to the softer part of the schedule that started this winning streak, and I think it continues with the Kraken here. A really tough spot, I think, for them. I would play the Oilers. I think I'm gonna play the Oilers three-way here, possibly puck line, but for sure gonna play three-way at the very least because it is, I give the Kraken a lot of credit, but it's a tough spot for them.
Yeah, and like to even, I think an interesting note that we were saying at the time, I know a lot of people were saying it at the time, but it's so much easier to like point to now about, I think this builds the case because it's even a larger sample of how good the Oilers have actually been playing. I've got it set to the first 22 games of the season right now on Evolving Hockey. The Oilers were third in expected goals for, and that was hidden. We talked about how they weren't scoring on a high percentage of shots, and they were getting an 74 save percentage. So, maybe Skinner slows down a little bit here, and I'm expecting that. But and they have improved under Knobloch. Don't get me wrong. I think the penalty kill's been better. The defensive play's been a little bit sharper, and part of that has just been, I think, Ekholm's always due to stabilize, and he's been so good alongside Bouchard. But I think those are kind of the cases of why maybe I think this team's a little more legitimate when we're talking about, like, I've kind of slighted recently some of these other teams in just in the midst of comparable win streaks. So yeah, still really high on the Oil.
Moving on to the Arizona Coyotes, our Arizona Coyotes. They're playing the Vancouver Canucks. Arizona not looking great in their last 10 games. Vancouver, on the other hand, just they continue to get victories. They continue to pile them up. They continue to find different ways to win. The Yotes are plus 170. The Canucks minus 205 on home ice. Total is at 6.5. I want to say it's probably shaded to the under. Yeah, shaded to the under here. Yotes really have trouble scoring. I love, that they're our team. I like to play them as a big dog, but the inability to score is really concerning for me.
Yeah, I agree. I really didn't have a lot on this game. I'm not going to try to pump up our Yotes, and the Canucks have played legitimately quite well lately. Faded them on Monday just a lot because of the spot and because I thought that Columbus has actually been a hair better than their recent results suggest. We've kind of been beating that drum, but yeah, I didn't really have much on this one.
Yeah, that we were lucky to get that Columbus win. I wouldn't say lucky because it was a good spot, but Vancouver, like, still, this is what betting the NHL is like. We have a good spot, we have a good price, and Vancouver still makes it really, really difficult. They
Yeah,
it,
I mean
it went the
they got
entire length.
yeah, they got there, whatever. How like the travel situation was a disaster and everyone had heard about that. And I thought Casey DeSmith actually did really good well that really, really well to help him get the point. But you can't rate that, right? Is at the end of a really successful road trip and it's just it is what it is.
Yeah, they and that's what in my opinion, you get a lot of credit for a team like Vancouver, and this is why teams win the President's Trophy. It's because they get a point out of that game, right? A scheduled loss, essentially. You still find a way to get a
100%.
point. That's
That shows how close the league is too, where it's like when you really know and you really follow things, I don't think a lot of people would ever say that, a point from Columbus is a good thing, but I actually don't think that many teams would have gotten points from Columbus there.
100%. The big one will be Leafs and the Canucks on Saturday night. Can't wait
Oh
for
yeah,
that.
that's gonna be fun.
Oh boy. Oh boy. The Leafs could have another loss under their belt between then and now, but we will get to that. How about the Nashville Predators and the LA Kings? The Preds plus 136, the Kings minus 162. Total sitting at 6. I think the two of us really want to continue to buy on LA, even though I went the other way on Tuesday night. I told you I want to buy on LA. I just didn't like where the scheduling spot for them. I didn't think it was time. Here, I kind of feel the same way because I don't want to lay that number quite yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like I could see them paying off in this game, but I don't know if like I don't think statistically it's like a strong bet. And mainly because the Preds continue to actually play quite well. We keep talking about this. And underrated coach, not saying coach of the year, but I think Andrew Burnett continues to really like the offensively, the Preds have looked legitimately good. They possess the puck well in the offensive zone. They play really well as a team and really cohesive. And whatever sample you grab from this year, their offensive form is actually quite good. And that's continued right now. They're at 3.39 expected goals for per 60, 53% expected goals over the last 10 games. I think that matches the eye test. I thought they played a perfectly fine game in Vegas, couldn't finish anything. It is what it is. But I just feel like the more I watch the Preds, like they're not really a team I want to fade at these numbers. If anything, I think they're like kind of still, I don't know. They might hold on to that wild card spot the whole time. I think it's starting to look like them and Edmonton, although Edmonton might not finish there. Them and the Kings, that could be it, and that would be crazy.
No. Yeah, that would be. I look at again, the spot I have a hard time with. This is LA's first game back after a pretty lengthy road trip, and they've had trouble at home too. So I that's a lot of miles on the belt of these Kings. It might be feel good to get home. But it's a Nashville team that isn't going to make it easy. I was really hoping for Kings to open at like minus 140. Then I would have
I
been
agree.
a lot
Yeah.
more excited to play
Like it's
them.
one of those ones if they came out and blew it up and won big, I'd be like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense. But like I don't know if I can like say that minus 162 is the price I want to pay. And maybe I'm a little biased because I look like an idiot trying to pick them in Dallas the other night. But I think the spot to watch could be Saturday versus the Rangers. That could be the one if they open at like minus 125, minus 130, then you get on that.
I definitely agree. It's going to get a little easier for the Kings here. And so, hey, look, I think it's a good lesson of when you're trying to, I want to buy on this team. It's not like a catch all, like, hey, we just blindly bet them. Still takes two to tango. The Nashville still is,
And you know what? To be fair, we did get, although the Riddich thing, I actually tried to get out. I had said I got out of some of my positions myself. Anyways, whatever. Just continue to be an idiot with this Kings team. But the Kings did pay off in Carolina with a good game and cash for us there, which kind of sucked me in again. But
Mhm.
I just, yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how they look moving forward because I just continue to think this roster can't be this bad.
No. And again, and I keep saying this too. 4 of these losses on this, what is it? I think they're 1-8, 1-9, in their last 10. 4 of these came in extra time. I really just try to dismiss that sort of stuff. Like you can't,
Oh, for sure.
you
You
can't
can't.
look at that red L and be like, oh, this team sucks.
No, and I always go back to this, and this is why the 3 point system is so perfect because a lot of people want to get rid of the loser point. You get rid of the loser point, and shootouts and 3-on-3 matters more. Like that's just a fact. You know what I mean? And that's
Yep.
my huge opposition to it is like you want everyone bitches about 3-on-3 and shootout. You want those to matter more. Like some team's gonna go 6-0 in the shootout and get in the playoffs as a result when no one's getting loser points.
Yep.
Um,
I
so
mean,
yeah,
Calgary last year would have been, they would have had 4 points all season.
yeah, and the 3 point regulation win would be sick down the stretch. I know the league doesn't want it because it gets rid of some false parity, but um, at this point, I think it would also create a ton of fun to see like huge spots come up. And be like, oh, this team can grab 3 points from this divisional win. Like if they show out and win in regulation, which seems to happen less and less.
6-point swing in a game late in the
Yeah,
season.
exactly. That'd be a lot of fun.
um, Before we get to our best bets, there's one more game on the board here. The New York Rangers -125 at the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who are by definition then +105. The total here is at 6. Told you I saw the Rangers in person the other night. It's a funny thing, Nick. I got to get your opinion on this. My flights had been canceled out of New York, and my hotel was a couple blocks from MSG, and it was like 6:15, and I'm like, I got to make this decision now if I'm going to go to the game, buy a ticket, because I want to see warm up. The only important thing, most important thing when you're going to a hockey game is going to warm up, and if you miss that, you might as well not go.
Yeah, warm ups is great. You got to catch warm ups. I don't know if they do it at MSG, but there are some like happy hours here that are fun to attend free and get a couple extra drinks and then watch warm ups. But I agree, you typically do catch kind of some cool things. It's fun to watch them go through it.
Oh yeah, there's nothing better. And the guys, I love the guys like the star players that just don't even do anything. Like they just sit there and stretch. Like Pasternak for
Yeah.
the Bruins. I don't even know if he shoots a puck or he just sits
I
there
had
and
a classic
stretches. And
photo of Obi. It was like midwinter when they came here in February one year, and he's just like standing beside the bench with his stick up and warm up, and just looks like he couldn't be more checked out. And the Caps lost that game like 3-1.
but then if he had 4 goals, he wouldn't be surprised either. I
And he
mean,
would probably have done the exact same thing.
exactly. I would say that I lean Vegas a little bit here. I'm trying to like find the floor with them. I think it's a little bit of a tough spot for the Rangers going cross country here. To think that, I know Vegas is banged up, but to think that the Rangers -125, when you factor in home ice and like the difference between these teams, I just like don't totally get there, honestly. I feel like a Knights team that's really good at home, really hard to play against at home. I wrote in our rundown, I lean Vegas. Then I opened up, Vegas's like expected lineup, and I went, oh, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. You take out of any team their top 2 centers, and they're not going to be very good. That's pretty much almost a rule. And the Knights won't have Eichel, they won't have Carlson here, and they won't have their best defender, which they've been fighting through for a long time. But this team's just pretty gutted right now. I didn't think they were overly impressive versus the Preds. Didn't hate that call by us at all. And you look at their underlying results, and granted, the Rangers aren't a great 5-on-5 team, but the Rangers 5-on-5 results have still actually been better than the Knights for the last 10 games, and they've got a goaltending edge, I think, if Shesterkin goes. So I actually was kind of leaning Rangers. I thought I would probably end up, if they were going to be like priced as a pick 'em, I would have been there. But yeah, for me, I actually think Rangers are pass.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of probably like we are trying to get ready to buy on the Kings. I'm getting like horny to fade the Rangers, and I'm just like, maybe this just isn't the spot for it.
Hopefully
Like,
hopefully Rangers win Thursday, solid game, and then we get some pretty good openers for the Kings to beat them on Saturday.
yeah, that would be a match made in heaven. So I don't know, follow the two of us in the action app, especially Nick, to see what he ends up going with there, if anything at all. It's when you sit here the day before the game at 3 o'clock, it can be a bit challenging, and we just need a little more information. Maybe someone like surprisingly will be skating for the Knights at practice or something like that. I don't know, but it is time for our best bets. And Nick, you have a best bet on what I would call probably the headliner here, maybe just because the Toronto Maple Leafs at -120 playing against the Calgary Flames, who are even money home dog here, over under 6.5. There's a lot of talk about the Leafs, Nick. A lot of talk.
There's a ton of talk. I don't think any other team, and granted, the game-winning goal was ugly. There's no disputing that. But it's also a perfect comment on how ridiculous the media circus surrounding the Leafs is. They didn't play great. They were lucky to probably be at 2-2 in that game, but that was a fast-paced, well-played game, I thought, where, like we said, like the Oilers have been just doing this to everyone right now. I think any other team, and I know they're coming in off the ugly Detroit loss and a couple others, that happens, everyone just be like, oh, you lost in Edmonton by a goal. Like, okay, that's tough. Like, Draisaitl backhanded one in from the goal line. Like, it is what it is. But this team is just like a whole different standard. And that's why if I was an NHL player, I would absolutely, I don't think I could stand playing there, because it's just, you get such, it's almost like interesting handicapping wise, because you have to look at like what's actually happening. I think if you're going to try to like seriously bet on these games instead of just going off like the media hearsay. But with that said, we have talked about this team a lot this year. I thought coming into the year that they would be worse defensively. They have been. You look at under Sheldon Keefe, they've finished in his full season 7th, 3rd, and 11th in expected goals against. So they've been a legitimately good defensive side. And then you look at the bodies they brought in, and none of them were good defensive players, right? Like no one thought that they would get better on that front. They thought they would be good
No,
offensively, but
Revo, right? He's good
yeah,
design.
exact. And Max Domi hasn't been a fit, which whatever. And then I know a lot of people don't love Kerfoot. People always post his like comical misses, but statistically, he's a pretty good two-way player. And they had a lot of guys like that go out the door. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. I don't think the personnel is what it was. But with that said, like I think that their recent run of play actually does make them warranted of being a slightly bigger favorite over Calgary. So I don't want to like pump them up. Like I've actually thought this year they were going to be a pretty good fade. And really, I think that has worked out pretty well. But like you look at the last 10 games, they're still like 8th in expected goals for. I think their play to the eye has looked better than a lot of people are crediting. It's just the fact that it's so easy to dwell on their like mistakes, like Austin Matthews just standing in front and screening his own goalie. When those things I think do happen to other teams. In fact, we know they happen to other teams, right? But they just get so much credit there, and everyone loves to rag on this team. And I get that. Like I know it's annoying hearing how much hype they have every year. But I think to just look at it, like to summarize kind of the point in terms of like handicapping this game, I think where they deserve to be power rated is still high enough, like probably 10 spots above Calgary, maybe 7 spots above Calgary. And that makes me think they deserve to be a bigger favorite here. And then I also don't hate the spot. Like it feels like one where you're going to get a pretty sharp effort from the Leafs. So, and then the other really important note, Dan Vladar hung in all right the other night. He gave up the one pretty soft point shot, but he had some big breakaway saves. He kind of broke our hearts there on Cooley twice. But I like he hasn't been very good this year, and Markstrom should remain out for this game, so that's really significant. So I think the Leafs are capable of paying off here as a favorite. It's one of those ones everyone's going to be like, "Oh, you bet on the Leafs as a favorite right now? Are you an idiot?" But I think they're still not that bad of a team, and they're facing Dan Vladar, so let's do it.
Yeah, we nailed Edmonton on Tuesday night. Again, it was a good game. I think the Leafs played well at times in that game. So the Leafs are obviously on a 4-game losing streak. They've blown a lead in all 4 of those games. I would say so 2 out of those 4 coming to Colorado and Edmonton. Those 2 teams, the Oilers and the Avalanche, would probably be my number one picks to come back in a game. Like could,
Yeah,
if I could rank 1 and 2 of who I would want to live bet when they're down, they could be Edmonton and Colorado. So I kind of excuse a little bit of that, or at least can understand why it happened, how it happened. So I think that you kind of helped me get to the Leafs here at minus 120, because also too, how much can Calgary make them pay for their defensive deficiencies, right? It's when we look at the Leaf, how to fade the Leafs, it starts with the team that's able to score and make them pay and play, force the Leafs to play in their own end. My only problem, Nick, what if it's Samsonov?
yeah, that's the thing. Um, oh, I wouldn't want that situation yet. He did play pretty well in his return, like, but I mean, it's one game and it's scary, and it did get blown up late, even though it wasn't his fault. He made a huge save right before the game-winning goal, so he had his guy. But the other like interesting note that I think is relevant when you talk about the Leafs and people just kind of rag on them, and I get that part of that is because of the way the playoffs have gone, and even though this hasn't actually been the problem in the playoffs, but it seems like people just forget that this is like a top four offensive team when they want to kind of rip on them. And granted, right now it's pretty easy to rip on them, but like I think that gets thrown out the window, and that's obviously a humongous part of why they get power rated respectably. Still, I feel like all year, like we've actually had their handicap pretty good, more or less, other than maybe Mike, who just fades them every single night, which probably hasn't been. I don't know how this it actually looks at this point, but that's probably
Because
actually
he
been a
listens to too
perfectly.
much Leafs radio, so he thinks
Oh,
this
he just
guy's
wants
falling
to
all the
hate them.
time.
And that's a lot of people. But I think like this is like a, I don't know, like probably not a cup contender, and we're not trying to sell that they are here to pick them at minus 120 versus Dan Vladar.
Are you still gonna play him if it's Sammy?
Yes, I'm gonna. I think
A very
Sammy
confident
Vladar
yes.
too, the over might have to be considered. I
Yeah.
just get scared because listen to all this the media talk, and Keith has been a competent defensive coach, and they've been a little better lately than on that front than I think people are kind of crediting. It just seems to go out the window when you're talking about like the collapses. It's easy to like forget that. Um, but yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like I feel like you almost just have to tune it out with this team. Sometimes it's just like nauseating. Like every like 3 and 4 game stretch where that goes really good or really bad. It's just like shut up. Like this is just how hockey works. You know what I mean? Like these things happen. You look at so many of these teams this year have been on like crazy runs up and down. Oh
No,
yeah.
I would say it's a good thing that they're on the road away from Toronto. The problem is they're on the road in other Canadian cities, which
Yeah,
like
it's that's very
it
true.
doesn't help.
Yeah.
Uh yeah, it
And I
doesn't.
mean, I hadn't looked at this, Tim, but I'm actually not surprised at all to see as I look right now. They're 11-4-6 on the road, which in terms of betting, that's 11-10. And they're 10-9-2, so 10-11 at home this year. So maybe all that noise has, taken its toll in terms of maybe being a bit of a negative environment.
Yeah, they needed to get away, but to back to Southern California, I think would have been best for them. My best bet here is my Boston Bruins at home against the Colorado Avalanche. The Bruins are, as I look here, the Bruins are minus 142. Colorado plus 120, total sitting at 6.5, depending on where you're shopping. And I'm on Boston here. I really like the Bruins in this spot. More so for me, it's a fade of Colorado, which sounds crazy, but this has been a lot for Colorado. This is going to be 3-4 for them. The Bruins haven't played since Monday. They had some guys banged up, sick, and it looks like they're trending to being healthier in some spots. Carlo was back at practice today, which is a really good thing for them. Allmark, he's probably not going to play in this game, but he was back skating. Forbert, so that's a really big deal for the Bruins. And I went and did a little dive on the Avalanche, who are probably my favorite team to watch in the NHL. Probably my favorite team to bet in good spots, because they're such a, when they get going, they're just a runaway train. But for them to be playing 3-4, I think what really puts me over the edge to Boston here is I looked at McKinnon, Rantanen, Drouin, Taves, Makar. It's been 20 plus minutes or 18 plus minutes, like in every game of this of, their last 3 games or so, which is just really hard to keep doing in the regular season. Like that is when you look at the disparities between time on ice between these guys and the rest of their team, it looks like a high school time on ice sheet. I just think it catches up to you in spans like this in mid-January going into Boston to cap this off in a Boston team that just has a big time rest advantage. And yeah, it's just, I love Colorado, but time to fade them here.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I would end up being on Boston here. We didn't get the price that I was kind of looking for, but I like the spot. I'm not going to disagree with really anything you said. That's
Yeah,
kind of
the price
exactly.
is bad, isn't great, but I was buying no matter what. So
Yeah, I see. Like I thought that this would be like a spot I loved, and that it was like closer to like pick, and I can see kind of what gets there. Like if you look at it, Colorado is like they're such an interesting team to handicap because it's so hard to see basically 5, 6 guys just dominating and making an NHL team this damn good. And that's exactly what McKinnon and Rantanen, Taves and McCarr and Drouin right now that Nichushkin's out, I guess is a humongous part. There's some pieces, like I think Malinsky's been quietly good, and I like him. And I know that it's probably a little unfair to just say there's been like nothing beyond those guys, but there's nothing like overly compelling where you're like, oh, they're winning these matchups versus this team and versus even like relatively mid teams. So it's crazy to think that they're this good just because of like those 5 guys. And I do think, like you say, the fact that they've all been used so much on this road trip and had to grind out some wins. And I think that's part of the reason you're going to have to grind out wins because the other lines are going to get scored on and your goaltending hasn't been that incredibly good. So, and that also works to your comeback point because some of these games versus Ottawa, you get down 4-2, and then it's just like, all right, let's roll the big guns over the boards and let them tie this up and, you know, get things going. So I fully agree. I've always loved watching this Avalanche core. I was so high on them the year they won the cup. That was one of my like favorite handicapping things. Probably literally my favorite in the time with action was how hard we pumped the Avs during that cup run. But I just think they've kind of quietly become like they're like almost like what Edmonton was a couple of years ago, I think, right now, where you have, and granted, they have like that one defensive pair that's probably the best pair in the league, but there's just so few guys up front that I like are pulling enough weight. And then Boston too, like their plays regressed a little bit, but I'm sure you probably saw like that Devils game. They looked more like the Bruins we're used to seeing. They're getting healthier. So not going to talk you out of it. I wouldn't be like surprised if they just came out and kind of ran maybe a bit of a tired Colorado team out of the building here.
yeah, that's definitely what I see. And with you made mention and we both dragged it on a lot, but those last 3 games in these Eastern Canadian teams that Colorado played, 2 comeback wins and a game against Montreal that went the distance. Like it was not there were not a lot of let's hang out on the bench here and take our gloves off and watch the third and fourth line guys go. They really had to earn them. So it,
Yeah, and to be fair too, like the crazy part is I feel like a bit of what I'm ripping on maybe is even a little unfair because you look and they're third in regulation wins and they're plus 29 goal differential, which is way up there in the West. So it's not like it's been like fraudulent wins here, or like they're just sneaking out shootout wins or anything like that. But it doesn't look like a recipe that it can be this good.
yeah, no, I trust me. I love them. I don't get excited betting against them. I just think I love the Avalanche, just not on Thursday night. Just not on Thursday night. Wednesday in the books, Nick, or Thursday in the books, Wednesday taping here. Your underdog is the Wild. Mine is the St. Louis Blues. Best bet, you're on the Leafs. I'm on my hometown Bruins. Leboff, hope you're enjoying vacation. Hope you're tracking the status of Lane Lambert and what's going to happen with your Islanders. Excited to have you back, buddy. Not much of a vacation when your team performs like that. So good luck to everyone betting the pucks on Thursday night. We'll talk to you next time on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your bets. And as always, make sure you like the podcast, comment, follow us in the Action app. Enjoy, everyone.